After the long-awaited release of the fourth installment of the Walton Files, Cyberfun Tech, we get the introduction of Bond, the violent and malevolent soul possessing the Bond animatronic. And with his arrivals in the series, an interesting theory popped into my head about his potential origins. With the tape itself, we see that Bond appears as a male ghostly spirit with a white suit and a black tie. His face has scars on it, with his nose appearing to be missing, a cut over his left eye, and what appears to be a bullet hole of some sort in the side of his head. Personality-wise, we learn that he is highly manipulative, hiding his true persona behind a facade of calmness. In reality, he is a bloodthirsty and psychopathic killer, believing that murdering his victims and stuffing them into animatronics will rebirth them into something beautiful. We also learn that while Bond enjoys the murder he inflicts on his victims, he seems to not own up to his killings and the increasingly brutal ways he kills them as a whole. Lastly, we learn that Bond may have some connections with the Shadow Man. During Cyberfun Tech, we see the brutal attack and murder of Soothing Woodings, with Bond snapping the woman's neck before mutilating her face. After this, we see her soul in Wonderland being confronted by Bond, who states that she wasn't dead yet, and that a spirit can't survive without being tethered to the vessel. This shows that even before they're officially dead, people's souls can be transported into Wonderland's limbo-like plane. Appearance-wise, Bond looks somewhat similar to Felix, specifically Felix after the accident, with some of the injuries seen on Bond potentially tied back to Felix in the accident, such as the scarred nose being tied to Felix smacking his on the steering wheel of the car, while the hole in the side of Bond's head being close to the spot where we see Felix bleeding in the aftermath of the accident. Personality-wise, the two are quite different. However, one key detail that the two share is their unwillingness to face up to their actions, with Felix going as far to lie about the events of the crash to avoid the consequences, and Bond seen crying or covering his face various times in the series after his kills. With all this in mind, my theory is that during the crash, Felix could have died for a brief moment, with a piece of his soul being transported to Wonderland before he would come back to the land of the living. This piece of Felix's soul would manifest all the man's bad tendencies, thoughts, and desires, and seeing as he wouldn't survive without a vessel, he would return to Bond's burgers and possess Bond, ultimately taking on the bunny's name and his own goals, becoming the violent Bond.